How much would you pay for a chance to live forever? 30,000? 200,000? Hi, my name is Eric, and this is Timeskipper. Today we're going to dive into those costs and show why cryopreservation can be so expensive. Cryopreservation companies now have a legal obligation to keep their patients preserved, so they have to figure out the cost of a lifetime storage for their patients and charge everything up front. They separate these funds into two distinct categories. First, those necessary to conduct the cryonic suspension, and second, everything needed for long-term patient care. So, what exactly determines the price of cryopreservation? Let's take a closer look at this with the example of Alcor. The majority of preservation costs tend to pay for liquid nitrogen, which can be about $2 to $5 per day for each patient. This is because the coolant boils off modern cryopreservation pods at about 10 liters a day, and liquid nitrogen can cost up to 50 cents a liter. Alcor, for example, invests about 58% of their costs for a whole body preservation into a patient care trust. These use low-risk investment funds to bring back a steady income for the needed liquid nitrogen. They could also theoretically be used in the future for a potential reanimation and with help returning to society. At an average of $3.50 a day over 365 days in a year, that's well over $1,200 a year. If an investment trust has an annual return of 1%, the cryopreservation group would need to invest $120,000 per patient. Next, Alcor spends 30% of their whole body preservation charge for the cryo procedure. This pays for everything needed during and after, including the medical services of specialists. Utilities must be paid, cryopods must be maintained and occasionally replaced, and these professional institutions now have full-time staff to pay. They were generally volunteer-run long ago, but as more patients have successfully become cryopreserved, the scope of their operations has increased. Alcor uses the final roughly 12% of whole body preservation cost on their patient standby teams. An effective cryopreservation would ideally start within 5 minutes, right after the patient is pronounced legally dead by an authorized nurse. At that point, the standby team hurries to conduct all preliminary procedures, such as protective medication and a blood washout before taking the patient to a preservation facility. The costs of a standby team are to pay the team, plus food, lodging, and local transport of them and their equipment. This can get quite expensive when a patient expected to die within hours instead holds on for days or even weeks. Other unforeseen expenses, such as for emergency procedures or to fight lawsuits on behalf of the patient, tend to come from a small, regular membership cost. It charges patients monthly in addition to the other costs. Another concern is inflation. Alcor's current charge is well over double what a cryopreservation would have cost in 1976. To keep their institutions financially secure, most cryonics companies regularly adjust their prices. They must also continuously stay on the cutting edge of cryopreservation technology and facilities. The only thing they can't fully account for are the costs for reanimating their patients, so they continue researching and doing the work as they can. Of course, Alcor doesn't have the only payment model, but they're one of the few cryonics companies to provide this breakdown of their costs. Presumably, the liquid nitrogen costs everyone about the same, and some organizations have the same cost for their standby teams. So perhaps the percentages remain about the same too. The Cryonics Institute charges either an almost 5% down payment for the procedure or less than 0.5% membership charges per year in addition to the cost of the procedure. They also make charges for the standby team optional rather than part of the basic cost. Tomorrow Biostasis has several different plans with different levels of service. They either ask for a one-time payment or yearly payments, then rely on a patient care trust like Alcor. Their monthly membership fees fund the medical team and further research into developing cryopreservation and revival, while a monthly coverage fee pays for the standby team and preservation procedure. CryoRoost charges once for the standby team and once for the procedure. They are focusing mostly on the Russian and Eastern European market, though they have reported to have almost half the patients of Alcor and the Cryonics Institute. With all that we know about the needs of cryonics, the cost of a successful preservation can be accounted for. Some are optional, most are necessary, and the various institutions are attempting different payment models to find what works best. So the question stops being, how much would you pay, and becomes a simple, why not? What price do you think is reasonable for a cryonics suspension, taking into account all the factors we talked about today? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for tuning in to Timeskipper. Also check out our blog and social media for more information about service providers and their costs. You can find all the links below. As always, if you enjoyed this little lesson on cryopreservation and want to stay updated, please click on the links below to like and subscribe. Once again, this is Eric from Timeskipper. We'll see you next time.